God is not racist. Now, by God, we're referring to Yahweh, the one true God, the God of the Bible. And when we talk about God not being racist, well, racism kind of means different things to different people. For the sake of this discussion, we're going to kind of use racism to mean what it generally means to people: prejudice against another person based on that person's perceived ethnicity, be that represented by a skin tone or other features like that. Racism, in that sense, includes prejudice that is overt or that is acted upon, but it's not limited to that. So God is not racist. Some will say God is racist because in the Old Testament scriptures, he chose Jacob and his descendants, the nation of Israel, over and above other people, you might say. And in the Old Testament, he ordered the destruction of entire races of people. First, the Bible tells us that Adam and Eve are the progenitors of the entire human species. Genesis 3:20 says that Eve would be the mother of all living. Adam, the first man, her husband, is the father of all living. Romans 5 talks about that he is the father of all of us. So there is one race. There is no such thing as race in that sense. You might say, well, I don't believe the Bible anyway. Great discussion for another day. But if you're going to judge the God of the Bible, then you will need to judge him by what the Bible actually says. So with this in mind, the Bible teaches that every human being on the face of the earth is related. We are all cousins. In that sense, there's no such thing as race. We're all one race. We're all one blood. Not to be too cute about that, because we do understand that the term race, as it's currently used, usually is used to describe people that share a particular trait, whether that's skin tone or other inherited features, because of the particular branch of ancestry that they have descended from. All right. Second, God is not required to treat every single person the same way. He is righteous toward every individual person. He's not unrighteous for showing special favor to someone, example, Jacob. When all is said and done, no person will legitimately be able to say, God, you did not treat me righteously, or you did not treat me justly. Deuteronomy 32:4 says that God, his work is perfect. All his ways are justice, a God of truth, and without injustice, righteous and upright is he. Now, did God show special favor toward one person, Jacob, and that person's descendants? Well, yes, but it does not follow that his actions toward anyone else are unrighteous. If he is righteous toward every individual, then aggregating people into a group, think Old Testament here, aggregating people into a group still does not change his righteousness toward each and every individual in that group. When you look at the Old Testament scriptures closely, when God ordered the destruction of a certain people group, and he did, it was because of their sin. It was not willy-nilly whatsoever. Quite honestly, if I had lived in the time of the Old Testament scriptures, I might have been killed, and I would not legitimately be able to say that I didn't deserve it. None of us have earned God's blessing. Now, even in the Old Testament scriptures, be aware that it was anticipated that all the nations of the earth would come and worship the God of Israel. In 1 Kings chapter 8, Solomon, at the dedication of his temple, talks about this. Isaiah 42 refers to Israel as being a light to the Gentiles. The Old Testament contains several examples of people from other nations coming to Israel and joining them and worshiping the true God and serving him. In Genesis 12, God blessed Abraham specifically, but he also said that through Abraham, all the families of the earth would be blessed. That's all a people group or a race is. It's a large extended family. And every people group is just a branch on the big family tree of a larger family, the human species. We are all related, and modern scientific views reinforce that fact. All right, Jesus of Nazareth, God's son, he intentionally broke down what we would call racial barriers. During the first century, the Jewish people generally despised their neighbors, the Samaritan people. In fact, even though the routes going through that territory made it unmanageable basically to go elsewhere, they would go around Samaria so that they wouldn't have to even interact with these people. But you know what Jesus did? He went right through Samaria, and in John chapter 4, he talks to the Samaritan woman, the woman called the woman at the well, and he shares his true identity with her, and he shares his message with her. Throughout his ministry, Jesus broke down these types of barriers based on whether it be ethnicity or race or social status. Jesus broke down those barriers. Christianity, lived according to the Bible, is specifically not to be racist. In Galatians chapter 3, Paul addresses this. In verse 27, he says, "As many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ." In the next verse, he says, "There is neither Jew nor Greek," or you could say Jew nor Gentile. It's not Jew and non-Jew, but he says this, "You are all one in Christ Jesus." We can disagree on specific policies. We can disagree on the politics of how certain things ought to be addressed in our current culture. But here's the baseline. God is not racist. Jesus broke what would be called racial barriers. Christianity is specifically not to be racist. As the followers of Jesus, how could we be? That's the baseline. And now let me share one last thought. John 3:16 says, "God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whosoever believes in him, whoever puts their trust in him, that person can have everlasting life."